Okay, I'm always a little bit nervous when I do these Q&A videos, but I did ask my subscribers to leave questions in a community post on YouTube that they were interested in asking me. I'm doing this because in the last couple of weeks I have managed to gain quite a few new subscribers to the channel. So I guess it's a good way to reintroduce yourself to your audience every now and then. And so I'm going to have to make a two-part series to this because I actually wasn't expecting as many questions as I got. So this video will be part one, and I'll do like 10 questions that I got in the post, and then I'll film another one in a couple of days with the remainder of the questions that I got. So I'm going to get straight into it, and I'm going to try and answer as off the cuff as possible. I didn't actually want to give myself too much time to prepare answers for these questions. So bear with me. I might be a little bit spontaneous maybe and give as honest an answer as I possibly can. Okay, so the first question I got is, if you could make a fragrance, what profile/notes would it be? Or what fragrance do you wish existed? Okay, so maybe years ago I could have easily answered this, and I probably would have answered by listing off a note pyramid of my favorite top notes, favorite mid notes, and favorite base notes. But doing that doesn't, I didn't want to do that now because I honestly don't know what I would create. I'm lucky enough to be able to collaborate with Miss Geo, have some input into the perfumes that are being created by Marie in that space. And I'm much more satisfied with that. And I think more recently, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, is that we're not so much focusing on creating perfumes based on a particular scent profile or using specific materials or notes, but more inspired by an actual, probably more abstract idea, basically inspired by things outside of scent itself, emotions, seasons, things like that, and elements. So I kind of really don't have an answer to this specific question because I haven't actually thought about that for a long time. And I still have favorite notes and materials that I smell in a lot of other perfumes that I love. And so I don't kind of take up any headspace trying to imagine a perfume that I would create myself. In terms of the second part of that question, what if there is a scent that I wish existed that doesn't? Again, I know the answer is I can't think of anything. And part of what actually keeps me excited about being into fragrance, perfume, is that there's always the potential to discover or smell something that you have not smelled before. The longer you go into this hobby, the less chance of that happening grows, and so, but that kind of little tiny, minuscule chance that you might smell something that blows your mind is always there and keeps you wanting to do more. So sorry I didn't directly answer that question, but that's the best I can do. The next question is, how has your perception of fragrances evolved throughout your career as a perfume influencer? That's kind of strange because, it's weird to even call this a career for starters, because it's not. And the title of influencer doesn't really sit that well with me. But how does my perception of fragrances, how has it changed? I kind of touched on it a little bit in my previous answer, in that for me, unfortunately, the more, and I can't speak for everybody else, but the more I smell, the more it takes for something that I'm smelling to impress me. And that's not even on, that's just because at some point, once you've smelled enough perfumes, you kind of hit this critical mass where you've smelled pretty much everything you're going to love. And then everything you smell after that point, there's going to be some degree of you forever comparing stuff to the things that you already love. It took me in the first. If anyone can be bothered and wants to go back and watch my very, very earliest videos, I even posted my very first top 10 video, because I do my current top 10 fragrances twice a year. So every 6 months I do a top 10. And if you look at my very first one, most of that top 10 I don't even own anymore. And so to my point is that when you're starting out early on, you tend to love more than you dislike, and then that percentage of things you love starts to shrink and shrink and shrink. And so how my perception has changed is purely just that at some point, my standard for loving a perfume has gotten to such a point that it's just all that more difficult for anything new for me to instantly love it. And so that's really been the main thing. I definitely can say that I'm certainly not in the camp of perfume used to be better in the good old days. Like I still think really good perfume is being made, but the thing is that since I started this channel, there has been just an explosion of new brands out there. So the market is just super, super saturated. And so that's exacerbated the fact that it's even harder to find gems in the flood of perfumes that are out on the market, just purely because of volume. So I guess that's my answer to that question. Next question is, what are the most important criteria for you when reviewing a new perfume? I guess I don't really have a criteria for things that I choose to review on this channel. I guess the only criteria I have, well, I can tell you what I need to do before I'm ready to review a perfume. And this has been my practice now for at least the last 5 years. I need to wear something on my skin, like as in a proper full wear, as in my scent of the day. So if I've got a sample, I need to have enough to be able to wear it at least 5 separate times, and not necessarily 5 days in a row. Okay, I know 5 days is an arbitrary number, but if I feel like if I've worn something 5 separate times, I've given it enough chance to experience it in different conditions, so I can give as rounded a review as I can possibly give. I'm not gifted enough to be able to smell something on a blotter and review it from that, because I just can't. And I figure that if I wear something several times and I can do that, then it's enough information for me to to make a review. So, having said that, as long as I'm always happy to review from a sample. I do not need to have a full bottle to review a fragrance. As long as the sample I know has come from a legitimate source and I have enough of it to wear as often as I need to do the review, then that's pretty much my criteria. Now, I'm more likely to do a review of a perfume if I have relatively strong feelings about it, and most of the time it's going to be positive. But I have reviewed things that I have not liked. But over the years, the fragrances that I'm less likely to want to review are not even the ones that I dislike, but just ones that are okay, but they're boring or they're derivative and they're not doing anything at all to move me in any way. And I know that's still useful for people to watch if they're interested in that perfume. But those reviews are the most difficult for me to talk about, because I can't fake like if I'm bored, if I find a perfume really uninteresting, I think that's going to show really clearly when I'm talking about it. And I don't mean to say that I am going to try and talk it up to make it more interesting. It's just I just don't feel like that's good viewing for anyone, and it doesn't feel good for me to review and for people to watch. So, like I always love reviewing stuff that I feel really great about and really positive about. And occasionally I'll smell something that I really don't like, and I'll make a review mainly especially if it's widely being hyped and I don't get it. So just to have that alternative view, like if I'm not loving something that is loved by a lot of people, then I think it's worth having those alternative views on YouTube. So yeah, I'm not afraid to do negative reviews. I just most of the time, I'm not smelling stuff that I really don't like. It's more that it's quite uninspiring. Next question, is there an underrated fragrance or brand you'd recommend that often gets overlooked in the perfume world? Okay, I kind of tried to be, I've tried to think of something for this question all day, and I'm going to answer it by naming a brand, and it's mainly because it's a brand that I've also overlooked and not so much underrated, but just have not given it the attention that I suspect it deserves. Now, I own one. I own a couple of perfumes from this brand, but the brand I'm talking about is Cartier, and the reason I'm naming them is A, because I only own the ones that I own because the first one is Declaration, and I just knew about that perfume, not so much about the fact that it was a Cartier perfume, but just the fact that it was a very well-known perfume, Jean-Claude Elena and all of that kind of thing. So I when I was going through this phase of wanting to try all the very sort of flagship perfumes of each brand, that was what I gravitated towards. And then more recently, I just by accident have gotten to try a couple of other ones from this brand. I really enjoyed smelling Santos Concentré. I got sent a little mini of part of their sort of private line, I guess. I'm not sure what Cartier calls it, Oud Radio, and that's really nice. And I also got a sample of Déclaration d'un Soir, and that is really nice. And I see people I follow on social media talk about other Cartier fragrances that I've not tried myself. And it's just given me the impression that there's this whole brand that kind of gets overshadowed by Chanel and Dior and Hermes, and even to an extent Yves Saint Laurent and Guerlain, obviously. But Cartier, I suspect, is a brand definitely worth exploring, and men and women marketed side of their lineup as well. Like I am very interested in trying some of the ones that are marketed to women. I think one of the Panthère fragrances, the one with dragon in the name, I can't remember quite what the name of that is, but I see them get talked about in quite glowing terms, and so I feel like if I'm looking at a designer brand, I would be looking at Cartier. Okay, next question: which fragrance completely changed your perspective on perfumes and why? Okay, so for this question, I actually am going to mention two fragrances. So the first one that I'm going to mention, and I've talked about this on my channel before, the first perfume that changed my perspective. This is more to do with what fragrance, the potential of fragrance. When I started, like probably 99% of people who are into this hobby, my only experience of fragrance was the men's section in the local department store or even the pharmacy shelves. So that was my experience. And, at that point, I really had no idea of the breadth of the perfume industry in terms of all the other brands that were out there that weren't available in my little corner of the world. And I guess it's probably the internet has a lot to do with this, because I started wearing fragrance in the 90s before everybody had internet, and I literally, my only exposure was what was in my local stores or whatever TV ads were showing perfume brands, and that would normally have been Chanel or Dior and that kind of thing. So when I really got into fragrances and started looking at internet forums about fragrance and reading blogs and so on, I heard or read, admittedly, I'm going to credit Luca Turin for this one, because when I first heard about the guide, I know he's not everybody's favorite person at the moment, but I know when I did hear about the guide and had a look at some of the 5-star reviews that he gave fragrances, the first one I kind of remember noticing was Timbuktu, and I basically would have just done a Google search to see if I could buy it, and there was a bottle available, and I bought this 50ml bottle, which is now empty. But Timbuktu, when I first smelled it, was really just opened my nose and my brain and my eyes up to what fragrance could be rather than what you were getting sold to you in a department store. Then the second fragrance I'm going to name, and this changed my perception in a different way. This fragrance probably taught me not to do this with other areas of life, but this fragrance taught me not to make a judgment on trying it once, and that is Habit Rouge from Guerlain. And the reason for that is, as I've recounted on here before, for some reason, I would walk past Habit Rouge counter or the Guerlain counter at my department store and spray on Habit Rouge, and each time I was compelled to try it, but for the first 3 or 4 times I would do it, I just did not like it. Early on I probably washed it off myself, but for some reason, and I can't tell you why, for some reason I kept trying it, and at the 6th, 7th, 8th go of spraying this on my skin, I don't know if I just tricked myself into liking it, but from that point on, I just loved how it smelled, and I ended up obviously getting a bottle. And this particular perfume is now like always in my top 10, top 5 most of the times, and I absolutely love. I can't imagine being without it. So the lesson in that for me, in terms of my perception, is that perfume generally needs to be given more than one chance. And I know that's difficult to do with every perfume you smell. And, I still dismiss some perfumes based on one smell, but if I can, I always smell it again just to be sure. So that's kind of the way it's changed my perception. Okay, I'm going to make this the last question of this video, and the question is, where do you think the perfume industry is headed in the next few years? What trends do you see emerging? Because I'm on the internet quite a bit, and it seems to be more and more prevalent, I can't help but just to think that AI is going to be more and more influential in the process of creating perfumes, and if not creating, definitely in the marketing of those perfumes. And like we're even seeing things like AI is being used to. I noticed that Fragrantica have got this section where they basically put comments, AI comments up on each perfume based on, I guess, what it's aggregated in people's comments across the internet about a particular perfume. And I think I can't help but think if I was a big brand, I guess doing marketing and research into what people out there want, why they would not use that tool. How exactly it's done, I have no idea about the mechanics behind that, but I just can't help but think that, focus group perfume creation, especially in the designer world, is just going to be even more refined and more influenced by artificial intelligence. But that's on a big company brand level, I think, whereas smaller independent brands probably do not have the resources to do stuff like that. I think more and more if you are looking for, I guess, originality in compositions for perfume, I can't help but think that more and more you're definitely only going to find it in indie brands. But the other thing I think might happen is that well, it's not this is not a prediction, but I often wonder at what point we're going to reach saturation with the amount of just the proliferation of brands, especially brands that are just branches of a sort of financing vehicle, basically owned by the same people. And I mean, I don't know how much more that can grow and how much that can be sustained. And also, I'm not sure where it's going to get to in terms of the way perfumes are marketed and the use of influencers. I think at some point it just gets too murky. That kind of sort of parasitic relationship between brands and influencers is really going to kind of break down and put people off. I mean, my ideal scenario is like I would like to see more brands being promoted by pure word of mouth and genuine enthusiasm and hype. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm being maybe too optimistic. I'm not any kind of prophet when it comes to predictions like this, but they're the kinds of things I think about. So I'm really conscious that I don't want to make really long videos for these. I will do another part with all the questions that I have not answered yet. So I hope you found that interesting. I'll do chapters, timestamps in the description if you just want to skip ahead to a particular question, just to make it easy. But thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next installment. Bye for now.